Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. I can see all our lovely participants filtering in. I know that takes a few minutes. So we're going to have a quick intro. Those of you who may not know me, my name is Sandy. I'm the senior editor at Bold Strokes Books. And we have a lovely panel today of fabulous authors who wrote books that will be released this October. We are going to be live on Facebook, and I do need a minute to set that up. So I do have an opening question for our panelists. And that question is, why do you write? What motivates you to write? So we're just gonna go around in a clockwise fashion, starting with Aurora, while I set up the Facebook Live. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sandy. You know, obviously I do it for the fame and the fortune. Because our genre is so conducive to, you know, big names and billion-dollar payouts. See, I think I'm being funny. I don't feel like it was funny in my head. I love happy endings. I live for them, whether it's movies or the books that I read. And writing is a way that I can create happy endings. And I think, given the state of the world right now, the more happy endings we can have, the better, and the more we can shine the spotlight on queer happy ever afters, the better. So that is my answer. What motivates me are deadlines. Sandy's busy, so I'm gonna hand it over to Kris.
Thank you. What motivates me, why I write? I write because, for the same reasons. I mean, I love love. I love telling stories, creating worlds where there is a happily ever after, and people can relate to it. And I just love having a voice and being able to share it with readers. And I'm going to hand it off to Gun Brooke.
Always been the born storyteller, whether it's a short anecdote or if it's poetry or song lyrics. Those were my first loves. So being creative, expressing myself, but also, since I love to read and the way that makes me feel, some part of me wants to create that for someone else. And if I can make someone forget about their hard life while reading about love or space, that makes my day. So that is why I write. So let's jump down to Erin.
Right, I think because I really like to just escape into someone else's world, whether it's, you know, their turmoil, their heartbreak, their heartache, or just being able to kind of harness emotions of another character and try to see them through to some end in sight. If it's a happily ever after, great. Which it typically is for me, but I also I like to see how a character can survive what I put them through. It's kind of nice to be able to know that a lot of people are a lot stronger than you give them credit, and I like to think that that's how my characters are as well. So, and I like to create that part of it. And
you're so mean to them.
I know, I love it. I really honestly like the idea of being able to tell a story and have people pick up a book and read it too. That's really, really fun.
Cool, all right. Thank you guys so much for that. We are gonna start the readings now, and when we do that, we're going to go into speaker view, which means everyone who isn't reading should mute themselves and turn off their video so that we only see the person who is reading. And I'm going to go down my list, starting from the top with Gun Brooke, who is reading from her October release, Renegades War. So Gun, just do a short intro to you and your book. And you can start reading whenever you like. Everyone else, please mute and videos off.
Well, yes, so I write under the pen name Gun Brooke, and I've written many books by now, so many that I actually lost count. And I've been with BSB for a lot of years. And this latest book, it's called Renegades War. It might come off as mirrored. It does for me. I hope you can see it anyway. And it's my first sort of mix between dystopian adventure, kind of, and it takes place between two fictitious countries, and where one is a dictatorship and one is a democracy, kind of like East Germany, West Germany, kind of vibe. And one main character, Aurelia, she is a freedom fighter, and she helps people across the border to the democracy from the country where she lives, which is the dictatorship. And when she is going back, the part that I'm going to read now, when she is going back, she runs into the other protagonist and finds this wounded person where they're heading back to where they reside in caves to stay out of the authorities, out of their view. So this is from the other character's point of view when she, the wounded one, when she finally wakes up. She had no idea where she was, staring up at what had to be some sort of ceiling, even if it looked more like bedrock. She blinked several times to clear her vision. Muted lights showed metal shelving and counters to her left. Slowly turning her head, she blinked again and managed to make out two beds, none of them occupied. A figure dressed in black clothes stood by another counter at the far end of the room with her back to her. Hello, she managed to mutter and then moaned as her head started to pound. The figure pivoted and walked up to her. Behind the person, another form appeared, this one carrying something. A rifle? Good, you're awake. A woman leaned over her and shone a small flashlight into her eyes. She blinked and moaned again as the light seemed to stab her brain. The woman didn't see face, but turned to the person behind her. Send someone for Aurelia. The other person nodded and left. Can you tell me your name? The woman asked. Sure. Searching her foggy brain and trying to disregard the throbbing pain that seemed to fill her entire head, she shifted restlessly. My name is Blue. And your last name? Blue began to shiver. Blue, everything in her mind seemed to fade to black in a gray mist. Just Blue? Feeling ridiculously apologetic, Blue looked up at the stern woman. Where am I exactly? And do you know my name? Her aching body and head suggested that she was injured, and perhaps the woman had asked her these questions to ascertain if she was concussed. No clue, dear, the woman straightened. Aurelia, our guest is conscious, if a bit foggy. Blue turned her head again and had to grip the side of the thin mattress not to fall off the bed because of the violent vertigo that hit her out of nowhere. Hey, easy. A clear voice spoke as a steadying hand was placed against Blue's shoulder. Another woman, this one appearing much younger, leaned over her, and a mane of long black hair fell toward Blue and hid her from the world. It caressed her aching cheek, and for an insane second, Blue wanted to turn her head again, despite the threatening vertigo, and hide her face in the silky masses. Oh, sorry. The woman flipped the hair back over her shoulders and then sat down on the side of the bed. Now the muted light hit her and revealed an oval face with olive-tinted complexion and black eyes. Her lips were full and faint dimples added to her beauty. I'm Aurelia. The woman patted Blue's shoulders lightly and then let go. My name is Blue. Pushing the bed with her elbows, Blue tried to sit up. Immediately, Aurelia's hands were back against her shoulders, holding her down. Just be still for a bit, at least until Mac here has another chance to examine you. You've taken quite a beating, and we can't be sure you have some internal injuries yet. Someone beat me up. Blue swallowed, her throat so very dry. May I have some water? Of course. Aurelia reached for a pitcher on the low stool next to the bed. After pouring some water, she supported Blue's neck as she sipped it. Better? Yes, thank you. To answer your question, yes, that's what we think must have happened. My friends and I came across you on our way home. You were unconscious and we brought you with us. I see. But Blue really didn't. And where am I? Somewhere in the Cloudinian Mountains. Aurelia shrugged, which made her hair billow around her shoulders. Sorry, but I can't be more specific right now as we have no idea who you are. Don't I have an ID card on me? Blue looked down at herself and only now realized that she was wearing nothing but a thin shirt and briefs. I meant to go through your pockets later, Aurelia motioned toward the counter across the room. We might as well do that now. Aurelia returned with a muddy bundle of clothes, some cut at the seams. Blue was too fatigued to move and could only watch as Aurelia pushed her hands in her pockets of the trousers and then the jacket. Nothing, she said as she shoved her hands into the jacket's inner pocket. Oh, wait, here's something. She pulled out a small object. Now we're talking. Glancing at Blue, she held it out for her. It was a wallet. Up for it? Now you can open it. Blue could hear the husky tremors in her own voice and hated the faintness. Did the stranger loathe any sign of weakness? Aurelia opened the wallet and pulled out some Cloudonian bills. You have about 40 sloths. She flipped through the wallet. And here's your idea. Blue and Rain, 31 years old. Aurelia held up the ID card and obviously compared the photo on it with Blue's face. I'll be damned if I can identify you with this. The hair's the same, but you're so bruised, we have to wait and see what you look like after injuries begin to fail. Blue sighed and closed her eyes. She didn't like this predicament at all. Her mind was foggy as hell, and what if the amnesia became permanent? Throbbing and sometimes stabbing pain kept her from being able to think straight. Don't worry about it. You'll be well taken care of in the meantime. Aurelia stood and leaned over Blue. You just focus on healing, okay? And while I'm focusing, am I to be your prisoner, Aurelia? Blue knew somehow that her acerbic and slightly disdainful tone was commonplace. It was as if her mouth and vocal cords recognized the sound. Brilliant. Would she ever discover anything pleasant about herself? Prisoner, Aurelia grinned. Nah, that's taking it a bit far. She tilted her head as she scrutinized Blue. Though I admit, you can't move around freely, as it would put my people in jeopardy. Blue frowned. What people? Where the hell has she ended up?
Thank you so much. I love a damsel in distress in a thin shirt and briefs, and I don't know who does it, so that sounds like a great book. And this one's a standalone, is that right, Gun?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is.
So Gun's quite well known for writing series, but this one is just a one-off, at least for now.
Yes.
Yep, and that's Renegades War. So you could pick that one up at our web store. If you would like to pre-order it tonight, we're only a couple of days from the pub date anyhow, you will get 15% off. And I've posted the link in the chat roll. Alrighty, up next, we have Kris Bryant, who is reading from her October release called Home. So everyone else, please mute and turn your speakers off. And Kris, introduce yourself a little bit about the book, and you can start reading whenever you're ready. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I am reading from Home, which is a holiday romance. It started off as a novella, and it just kept going. So I begged for forgiveness and made it into a book, and Sandy was sweet enough to accept it. The best part, what this is a small town romance, and the characters, I have the sheriff, small town sheriff. She went away to school and she was living in Colorado, and she moved back to town probably about 8 years prior to when the story takes place. But in it, her high school crush actually returns to Spruce Mountain, Oregon, and I'm just going to start at the beginning. Natalie pulled up the collar of her coat and crossed her arms to ward off the late October chill that crept inside the sleeves and around her neck. This was her least favorite time of year, when leaves and brushes browned and shriveled before the grayness of winter set in. Everyone loved the fall, but she hated the cold. Spruce Mountain, Oregon had all 4 seasons, and Natalie hated 2. She crossed the street and stopped to pet a beautiful golden retriever waiting outside the craft store where she was headed on her lunch break. "Look at you, you're so pretty. Are you Greta's new helper?" A tiny nagging feeling tugged at her when she noticed it wasn't wearing a collar. She gave the dog a quick rub with both hands as if to warm it, and turned to march into the store to find out who had left their dog outside. She pushed the door open and smiled at the warmth that greeted her. "Greta, this is my favorite store on Main. It's always warm and smells like pumpkin bread." Greta Bowman, owner of Creative Crafts, greeted her with a big smile. "Sheriff, you're always welcome here, especially with the big drop in temperature today." As sheriff of a small town, population 1880, Natalie was hyper aware of anything out of the ordinary. She knew most of the residents and business owners. The town was comfortable, borderline boring, with the occasional public intoxication or disorderly conduct sprinkled in to keep her from downing all of her life choices and choosing a career that wasn't overly exciting. "I can't believe how cold it is. It's not even November. Do you know whose retriever that is out there?" Greta looked around the store. "No, but we only have a few customers right now. Mrs. Bennett and another young woman. You can ask them." She pointed to the back of the store. "Let me go get your mother's order. I'll be right back." Natalie nodded and worked her way over to Mrs. Bennett, who was perusing the yards of buffalo checked flannel. "Oh no, dear, that's not my dog. Brutus is home in bed. You remember Brutus, right?" Mrs. Bennett asked. She had a Chihuahua that she had carried in her purse until the dog's old bones couldn't handle the slight sway to and fro. Now Brutus stayed at home and she ran her errands. "That sweet boy, give him a pat on the head from me." The fact that Brutus was still alive surprised her. She remembered when he was an 8-week-old puppy. Back then, Mrs. Bennett was her physical science teacher. She showed up at their high school graduation with him, much to the delight of everyone in attendance. Who could resist a puppy the size of a teacup? That was 17 years ago. She smiled at Mrs. Bennett and circled the store to find the other patron Greta pointed out, and located a petite brunette bent over a bin of buttons. "Excuse me, miss, is that your dog outside?" The brunette stood up and turned. Natalie took a step back and then another. She knew that face, those eyes, those full red lips. Time spun backward, and suddenly it was 17 years ago, and she was at Ellie Shepard's graduation party, staring at the same soft brown eyes after experiencing the best kiss of her life. "Oh my God, Nat, is that you?" Warm hands grabbed hers and squeezed. Natalie blinked and stumbled over the words tumbling in her head. "Sarah, hi, what are you doing here?" She clammed her mouth shut and forced a smile. "I mean, what brings you back to Spruce Mountain?" Sarah Eastman was even more beautiful than the day she left. The innocence and softness of her youth had been replaced by stronger, more noticeable curves and a thinner, more mature face. Her beautiful dark hair now had caramel highlights and brushed her shoulders. Everything about her still took Natalie's breath away. "I moved back to regroup. Spruce Mountain was always the closest thing to a home for me," Sarah said. They were still holding hands. Natalie relaxed her grip and dropped the physical connection. "Your aunt and uncle still live here, right?" She knew the answer because she had just seen them at the town meeting earlier in the month. Maintaining eye contact with Sarah was tough. She hated that all the confidence she'd built up over the last decade crumbled as she stood in front of the girl who kissed her once and never looked back. "Yes, we're staying with them until we can find a place ourselves, or until I can figure out my life." Sarah tucked a piece of hair behind her ear with a shaky hand and broke eye contact. The word "we" hit Natalie in the gut and caused her heart to slip down in her stomach. It wasn't as if she had pined for Sarah over the last 20 or so years of her life, or compared every girlfriend she ever had, but Sarah had set the bar high the second their lips touched so many years ago. "Oh, that's great. I'm sure you'll figure something out." She told herself to quit nodding at Sarah. "I guess I'll see you around. Let's have lunch this week and get caught up." "Sheriff, are you in town?" Fred just called, said something happened at the market. Natalie's shoulder walkie-talkie boomed in the awkward silence that settled between them. Something always happened to Natalie when she got a call. The adrenaline rush kicked her confidence up a notch, and her heart, which was already beating at an alarming rate, fluttered faster. She reached up, pressed the button, and answered, fully aware she was still staring at Sarah. "I'm not too far away. I'll be there in 10. She released the button to end the call. I'd better go. It was nice to see you again. Every part of her hummed with excitement, and a heated rush of anxiety flowed through her veins at seeing Sarah again. Greta appeared. Here's your mother's order. Be sure to tell her I said hello. Greta's interruption gave Natalie an excuse to get out there before she did or said anything stupid. She took the bag from Greta and nodded to both women as she created space. Spruce Market was within walking distance, but she couldn't go on a call with a giant bag of material slung over her shoulder. Plus, she needed time to process the last 5 minutes of her life. Sarah Eastman was back in town. Sarah fucking Eastman. The girl who had confused her and made love seem so clear at the same time when they were anything but. Why now? She hurried to where her car was parked, flooded with thoughts and memories of Sarah when life was easier and her emotions were untamed. That's it. It's home.
Yes, it is, you guys. I love that. I love that. Actually, I hate that when we, encounter someone that we really like or are really attracted to, we always end up like really anxious and nervous and,
Yes.
the worst version of ourselves, right?
And you can't stop talking.
I think you captured that perfectly.
Thank you.
So that is Home by Kris Bryant. It will be out in a couple of days, and you guys are in for a treat because this one, was this the one that was supposed to be a novella? Is that right?
Yeah, it was just a short little holiday novella that it kind of just, they kept talking and the story kept growing, and I knew I had a deadline, and so we just stretched it to be a small book.
So you're getting more story than we had anticipated, which is always a good thing.
Yay.
Alrighty. Up next, we have the lovely Aurora Rey, who is reading from her October release, Twice Shy. Let me bring everybody back. There we go. Aurora, why don't you introduce yourself, introduce your book and your reading, and you can start whenever you like.
Thank you, Sandy. So as Sandy said, I'm reading from my October release, Twice Shy. It is, it started out as my love letter to the movie It's Complicated, which I just adore. But if you're familiar with that movie, it's actually not a romance, it's a rom-com. And the whole story is kind of the Meryl Streep character working it out with her ex. And so that was sort of my jumping off point. I have two characters, both divorced. One recently so, and one who's been divorced for about a decade, but she has an ill-advised affair with her ex, which she almost immediately regrets. But it kind of sets the stage for her to open up her heart to new things. And so I'm going to be reading a scene between the two main characters, Amanda, who is the owner of a bakery, and Quinn, who is the architect that she has hired to do some expansions and renovations on her space. Amanda missed the meeting with Quinn and felt bad about it, and so invited her over for dinner to apologize and to make it up for it. So they've had dinner, and this is sort of the end of their evening. So I think we should do it again. Amanda swallowed and felt a flush creep into her cheeks. Was Quinn asking her out? I'd like that. Maybe with no talk about work at all. She thought maybe Quinn was flirting with her, but couldn't be sure. But that was way more than friendly. I'd like that too. Amanda opened the door, but Quinn didn't immediately step through. The hesitation made the air between them feel electric, like the moment before a first kiss. Amanda braced herself for it, excitement and anticipation buzzing through her. Quinn looked at her mouth and into her eyes. A car pulling into the driveway broke the moment. The tension or spark or whatever it was dissipated. Amanda glanced over. That would be my son. Ah. Quinn's expression turned sheepish, like she was processing what it would have been like to be caught. Amanda couldn't help but find it endearing. Since a kiss was completely out of the question now, she walked Quinn down the sidewalk. When Cal reached them, she said, Quinn, this is my son, Cal. Cal, Quinn Sullivan. She's the architect working on bakery expansion. Quinn and Cal exchanged greetings, and Cal headed inside. Quinn seemed unbothered by the interruption. Still in high school or done? Just finished. He's starting at Cornell in the fall. Quinn smiled. My nephew just finished his first year in the architecture program. Cal's planning environmental engineering. We'll see if it sticks. Yeah, I think Jacob is pretty settled, but who knows? While the almost maybe kiss had been nice, this conversation was much more her speed, for better or worse. As long as he doesn't change his mind 10 times, I think I'll be okay. Totally reasonable. Quinn seemed to hesitate again. Have a great night? It came out almost like a question and made Amanda wish she wasn't so out of practice. Quinn stuck her hands in her pockets and rocked back on her heels. You too. Amanda walked back to the house as Quinn got in her car, but she turned to wave from the porch, all the while wondering if Quinn might have kissed her. Inside, she found Cal with his head in the refrigerator. Didn't you eat at Zoe's? Yeah, but that was like 2 hours ago. There's coq au vin left over from dinner if you want. Yes. He dragged out the word and snagged the bowl. There's salad too. He waved her off, scooped out a piece of chicken and started eating it with his fingers. I'm good. Don't you want that warmed up? Nah. She shook her head. I suppose I should be grateful you're using a plate. He shrugged. Why was your architect over for dinner? Because I forgot I had a meeting with her and felt bad. That's too bad. I know. She showed up at the bakery and I was frantically trying to finish an order. No, I mean, it's too bad that's the reason. She started cleaning the kitchen around him. What do you mean? I thought maybe it was a date. She didn't discuss her love life in any great detail with her kids, but they often teased her about getting out more and getting a life. We're working together. So it's not like she's your employee. Amanda frowned. I know. Seriously, Mom, how long has it been since you've been on a date? Not counting Mel? God, if Cal or Daniela had a clue about that. She shoved the idea aside. They didn't and wouldn't. A while. Exactly. You're going to have an empty nest soon. You should start living it up. She got the image of a cozy night in with Quinn, dinner, a fire, a kiss that might lead to more. I'm pretty happy with my life, thank you very much. You know what I mean. He sighed, and for the first time, she wondered if maybe there was more to it. Are you worried about me? He rolled his eyes, and she got the impression he wished Daniela was there to back him up. Not worried. We just don't want you to be lonely. Suddenly, the ripple effect of her choices came into focus. She'd always put her kids first, had wanted to as much as it had felt like an obligation. But now she could see she wasn't modeling the sort of balance she always encouraged them to find. She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him. You don't need to worry. He returned the hug, but then stepped back and folded his arms. The gesture reminded her so much of Mel, she almost laughed. And what's your answer when Daniela and I say that to you? Touché. It's my prerogative to worry about you. He lifted his chin with a trace of challenge. Well, same goes. How'd I get so lucky in the kid department? He dropped his hands to his sides and shrugged. Beats me. And just like that, the emotional moment had passed and her smart aleck son was back. She bumped his shoulder with hers. You in for the night? Yeah, I have to work early tomorrow. She kissed his cheek. Sleep well then. You too. She started toward the stairs, but paused when he called after her. She poked her head back in the kitchen. What's up? Maybe you should think about dating your architect. She's totally your type. She shook her head but laughed. Thanks for the advice. I'll take that under consideration. His voice followed her up the stairs. You should listen to me. I'm very smart.
That was like adorable though. I love that the kid is so on board with the architect coming over for dinner. So cool. I think we often see scenes where the kids are a reason not to get involved with someone, right? Like protecting the kid's feelings or whatnot. So it's really cool to see a scene with an older kid being like, Mom, come on, go for it. Was that a choice that you made intentionally?
Yeah, I mean, you'll sort of see that one of the two kids is a little bit more on board than the others. But I think the reality is so many middle-aged women who have kids end up divorced. And so kind of working through the idea that life doesn't end there and how do you navigate the reality of living a life for yourself, but also still being a parent.
Yeah, that's cool. I loved it. Thank you so much. So
Thank
that
you,
is
Sandy.
Twice Shy by Aurora Rey, which is 15% off in our web store tonight until 7:30, and the link to that is in the chat roll. All right, next up, we have the incomparable Justine Saracen.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you so
Okay.
much for fixing your audio. I appreciate that. You did miss the opening question too, so we'll circle back to that so you have a chance to answer. And that was, why do you write?
Oh, because fiction is so much more interesting than reality. In fiction, I get to sleep with anyone I want to.
I
And I get,
That's such
and
a
I
good
get, And I get to have things turn out the way I want them to. I get to sing opera. I get to win battles. What a question.
That's a perfect answer. I love it, and I am stealing it next time someone asks me. So please go ahead, introduce yourself, introduce your book, and you may start reading whenever you like.
Okay, well, Justine Saracen. I've been with Bold Stroke Books about 500 years, and this is, I've lost my own picture, but be that as it may. This is my latest production, Sleeping with Reindeers, and it doesn't have, well, actually it does have a doggy, but more importantly, it has reindeer, has baby reindeer. Anyhow, I'm not going to do a long reading because it isn't my style, but I'd like to talk a bit about the event that I wrote about. Mostly I write about World War II, and this time I've chosen to write about the Norwegian resistance, primarily because there's no more winter in Western Europe and I love snow. So I wanted to write about a war story in a snowy environment. So I chose an actual event, which was a mission sent by the British to storm an installation in Norway, where the Nazis were developing heavy water to create an atomic bomb. The mission failed disastrously, but then they mounted another mission which succeeded, and it was even made into a movie called The Heroes of Telemark. I go back to those events, but I add women, and over the course of the whole adventure, they fall in love. But just as important, of course, is the historical event, which most Americans don't know about. So I will do a very short reading just to give you a sense of how it all starts. My heroine is Antonia's next novel. I've been writing too much. Kirsten Brun. And she embarks on the first mission with their gliders who are towed across the Atlantic into Norway, where in fact they crash. In real life, everyone dies or was captured and died in captivity. But in my novel, she survives and escapes. But there she's stuck in the middle of Norway in November in a snowy tundra. So it starts. Was it the third day? With the nearly endless darkness, she couldn't be sure. It seemed like she'd been trudging for weeks. On a flat, open tundra, devoid of objects, she had nothing to measure movement against. No matter how long she plodded, the mountains, when she could see them, seemed as distant as they had been 2 hours before. Twice she crashed into a snow-covered rock, and once she toppled down a slope into a gully. The snowfall thickened, and as the wind picked up, the ground seemed to boil, sending up vortices of snow powder. Soon the front of her body was coated with a layer of frost, and she was just another white-covered object on an endless white landscape. She lurched step after step, driven by the sheer urge to live, but she could make no headway, and her muscles were giving out. Her dazed mind meandered. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Fuck her spirit for getting her into this. She was pretty sure the blizzard had a spirit too, and it hated her. Tired, so tired. Finally, she collapsed. Phantoms flickered in the snow in front of her, and she surrendered to delicious sleep. Time passes. Something wet and fetid touched her face. Slightly delirious, she opened her eyes, bewildered. An animal's snout sniffed at her hair. She flinched, and the snout pulled away, revealing other snouts that snorted steam. Light brown fur led up to widely spaced eyes and antlers. Reindeer. Abruptly, they separated, and a human face appeared above her, a woman. The embroidered cap, topped by a red pom-pom, and her blue smock identified her as Sami, Laplander. 2 men appeared behind her, leading a reindeer that hauled a high-backed sled. They spoke among themselves unintelligibly, or perhaps she was too dazed to understand them. Then the woman knelt behind Kirsten's head and grasped her under the arms. One of the men lifted her at the knees, and together they swung her onto the sled, covering her with reindeer hides. No one spoke to her. Kirsten relaxed into the warmth of the sled and the sense of rescue. When something bony fidgeted next to her, she recoiled for a second, but when it snorted wetly into her ear, she realized it was a reindeer calf. Or was she hallucinating? The sled took off with a jerk and she fell into a half stupor, faintly conscious of the rocking of the sled and the shish, shish of the runners on the snow. When she awakened again, they were still moving, but the night sky had become clear and it was filled with stars. The bony calf at her side had not moved. The only sounds were the tinkling of the bell of the sled reindeer and the dull snorting from the beast that surrounded them. Memory rushed back to her. All of her comrades were dead, and now she was in the hands of the wild Sami. Everything had changed.
Is it just me, or was anyone else expecting Santa to show up on that sled with the reindeer? No, just me. So what's the craziest thing that you've learned about reindeer in your research writing this book?
I learned not so much in the research, but going to Finland, but going to where the Sami lived. I went to a Sami reindeer farm, and I discovered that when they pull the sled, they defecate. It's the movement. It's the movement of their, just like with dogs, you take your dog out for a walk, the movement causes them to do their business. It works with reindeer too.
Okay, there you go.
There you go. Something really.
I love it. All righty. Last but certainly not least, we have the amazing, the incredible, the incomparable Erin Zach, who is reading from her new release, The Other Women. There it is, you guys. Go ahead, introduce yourself, introduce the book, and start reading whenever you like.
All right, I'm Erin Zach, and I wrote this book called The Other Women, and it's about two women who get their heart broken by the same woman and end up meeting, and their journey to falling in love. So I'm gonna start right after they meet and they go for drinks together. This is told in first person from two separate points of view. So I'm gonna be in Cecily's point of view right now. So just so you know. What kind of job sends you to Vegas alone? Oh yes, the dreaded questions about myself. Are you sure you want to hear about me? I feel you're much more interesting. Why? Because I live in Vegas? Believe me, the city is not all it is cracked up to be. Francesca glances around the second floor of the bar. And besides, she sips her whiskey. I cannot stop watching her mouth, and it is really becoming a problem. It's rare a woman as beautiful as you is wandering around alone. Beautiful, I find myself sliding into flirtatious without any reservations. Maybe it's the third vodka I'm sipping on. I have no idea. Oh, please. What? You're gorgeous. In a holy shit, who's that woman kind of way. I giggle. Yep, giggle. The sound is shocking. I do not giggle. I laugh, sure. I chuckle from time to time. But giggle? I stopped giggling soon after I married. Life is too intense these days to giggle. Francesca seems to enjoy the sound, though, and her smile takes my breath away. I really don't think we should discuss... I look at my drink. The bubbling of the soda water has caused the straw to float to the surface. That straw is exactly how I feel, floating around, wondering what the heck is going on. I take it between my finger and thumb, pull it out, and bring it to my lips. I nibble on the end. I'm nervous and feel out of place. And I also need to stop talking. Not only should I not want to keep this up with someone who isn't Willow, I also shouldn't want to fall into another horrible transgression while not being completely separated from Luke. My mind flashes to his smile, his hair, his beautiful eyes. Why, oh, why can't I just be in love with him? Everything would be easier. I would never think about Willow again. I would never think about unfulfilling sex. I would never think about lost babies and horrible nightmares and all the things which ruined me, ruined us. Francesca reaches across the table. Her hands are lovely. Her nails manicured with light pink polish, with the nail on her ring fingers painted maroon to match her uniform. I wonder why she's not wearing a ring. Is she really not tied down? Would it make all of this less stressful and easier if she was? When she nears my left hand, I clench it into a fist and she stops abruptly. I only want to say that I didn't mean to upset you. Her tone, her words, her hand and fingers, how she's still reaching out, all of it seems to relax me and I unclench. I let my pinky mingle with her index finger. You didn't upset me. Is it something you want to talk about? She asks. I can only shrug, which seems to work for her. She squeezes my pinky the slightest amount before she pulls slowly away. A part of me longs for her to bring her hand back, to scoot closer in the half-moon-shaped booth. Tell me about you, I say softly. I'm not sure if she heard me. She's not looking at me, but she sighs and turns, so she's staring into my eyes. Her eyes are the most beautiful brown I have ever seen. And I'm glad it's not my turn to speak. I couldn't find words if I was paid to. Where should I start? She pulls a leg up. She's discarded her black heels under the booth. I'll never get over how some people can make ripped jeans and heels look so good, but man, she really does. The beginning, she asks. I nod, the only response I can muster. Well, my grandmother came here with a man she thought she loved. She leans forward, illegally, of course. After she winks, she sits back and looks away. Little did she know she was going to meet and fall in love with my grandfather, who was her boss at the time. He owned the dry cleaning business where she found a job shortly after she made her way here. He asked her to marry him, so she did, and they had 2 children, my mother and her brother, Claudia and Ciro, which is honestly unheard of in our family. My mother married my father when she was 18. Francesca pauses and stares off into the distance, seemingly gathering her thoughts before she turns back. He was American. Well, I mean, his parents were from Ireland. He had the reddest hair. She smiles. If I do nothing with my hair, it has a lot of red in it. She runs her hands through it, starting at the hairline. The color she has now is mesmerizing, but I can imagine her with reddish auburn hair, and the image makes my palms sweat. She bites her bottom lip. I'm sorry, I'm really not that great at talking about myself. I'm just not a fan. Why? I finally find my voice. You've got my attention. Her eyes widen and I smile. I just mean you're very easy to listen to. She tilts her head. Thank you. Her voice is barely above a whisper, but I hear it clearly. It's a good way to get hurt, though. Her answer, the sadness behind it, the boldness in front of it, makes my heart beat very hard for as long as possible. You think I'm going to hurt you? You barely know me. Exactly, she says. The worst part is I understand her completely. Oversharing is a great way to find yourself deeper than you'd like, and the only reason she can know that is because she's been there before. Knowing I'm probably right makes me sad. The idea that she's been hurt deeply has me feeling protective as well as confused. I don't plan on seeing her again. These drinks, these longing looks, these gentle touches will all be over tomorrow when I see Willow again. And I'm sure Francesca feels the same way. There's no way she thinks this will go anywhere. We're enjoying the nightlife, the ambiance, the feel and look of Las Vegas, where anyone can be anyone, and life speeds up as it simultaneously slows. So for tonight, I don't want to hurt her, and I do not want her to fear anything about me. Everything about Vegas is a contradiction, but we both know that, don't we? I can assure you, I say, I don't want to get hurt just as much as you don't. She seems to let my response roll around her brain a couple times before she responds. My abuela and my mother live really close. Her voice sounds how I imagine her skin feels, silky and warm. I have 3 brothers. This time it's me who reaches around the table to touch her. My fingers land on the back of her hand, and I'm right about her skin. You do not have to tell me anything else. I rub lightly with 2 fingers, okay? She doesn't move, except her eyes, which blink a couple times rapidly. Okay, I ask again. This spontaneous date has gone from fun and flirty to real and heavy in the blink of an eye. I recently had my heart broken, she says, and her eyes fill with tears. She shakes her head while sucking in a breath. Why am I telling you this? I have no idea, I say softly. She chuckles and dabs at the wetness under her eyes, careful to not smudge her makeup. There's just something about you. Her voice, how it trails off, reminds me of coming up for air after swimming, the way the oxygen fills your lungs and you realize you're not drowning. You're okay. Well, I will listen if you'd like, I say to her. She moves her hair over her shoulder, the perfect curls holding on even after all her fidgeting. Maybe on the next drink. Oh, I drag my fingers lightly down the length of her middle finger. You think I'm staying out? Oh, come on. She looks away, finds her friend across the room, and motions for 2 more drinks. It's Vegas. One way or another, I plan on keeping you up all night. And that's the other woman.
Okay, well, that's the best ending line I've ever heard.
Well, you know.
Everyone's welcome to come back with audio and video. But Erin, I have to make a request that you do not hurt these poor ladies ever again. Smooth sailing, right?
Well, you know, it's the way it has to go, but they find themselves in the place where you can lose yourself so completely. Vegas, they end up finding themselves, which is exciting. Sorry, my dog is being very annoying.
All right, we have it. A promise from Erin Zach that 2 lovely ladies will find love eventually, despite their pain. Alrighty, we only have 2 minutes. I timed that really well, which never happens. So I have one quick question from our reading audience. And this is, do you have a favorite place to write, and has that changed during the pandemic? So we only have a minute or 2, so we're gonna do a quick speed round, starting with Gun.
My recliner, absolutely. Doesn't matter if it's pandemic or not, that's where I am, so.
All right, your recliner. Aurora Rey.
I still do most of my writing at my kitchen island, but I really miss coffee shops and airports, especially for sex.
Ready, Kris.
I love writing in my new hammock that I got because of the pandemic, so I enjoy writing there. But I too miss the coffee shops, and I miss my dates with KB Draper, our writing dates.
Erin, how about you?
I used to write at Panera all the time, and now I don't. So it's very difficult, and I hate it. So I cannot wait to go back to Panera one day. I could, but I just feel weird being in there without a mask on, sitting at a table, writing. I don't know. I just feel bad for the workers, so I don't do it.
Yeah, let's hope this pandemic business ends soon.
Mm-hmm.
Justine, how about you? Where do you write?
I stopped writing during the 6 months that the bistro across the street was closed. It's open now, and I go with a mask, and after I've had a glass of wine, I write quite well.
There you go. A lot of you guys don't write at home, which is so interesting. Thank you all so much to our amazing authors. Appreciate you guys.
To everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks, everyone, for
Sandy.
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.